Liberal MPs are demanding that all children come off Nauru. We've had Tony Abbott come out today and say that, Nauru gets a bad rap and it's actually quite a good place and people are treated well. Pauline Hanson, Scott Morrison and the Morrison government is seriously looking at doing a deal where people are resettled on New Zealand if there's legislation that they can never come back to Australia. The likely member for Wentworth, Karen Phelps, has today indicated she would support that. What do you think?
We've got about reports that I've heard out in New York, there's about 14,000 people waiting in Indonesia for a change of government so the boats can start coming back to Australia. It's cost people about, the Australian taxpayer, $572,000 a year to keep someone in detention. These people have been denied to come here to live in Australia because they weren't regarded as genuine refugees, possibly economic refugees. They've chosen to not go back to their own country. The government has tried to, they're in a bind. Also with these children, you've heard the Nauruan government say, the kids here, they're playing on the beach, they get treated no different to everyone else, regardless of their cultural background, regardless of race. Yes, it's probably not like Australia, to go down to the cinema, go to the playgrounds, go to the swimming pools. No, they probably don't have that. They probably have a more balanced life, but the parents have promised the kids they will bring them to Australia. And I know that I've heard from guards that worked on Nauru that they actually use the kids, the parents use the kids because they want to use them as pawns to get to Australia. My concern about going to New Zealand, it puts out a clear message to those waiting in Indonesia that eventually you will get to Australia. If they're actually going to go to New Zealand, I agree, they shouldn't come back here to Australia at all. We've got 65,000 people in Australia here illegally. They will get lost in the system. They are out there. We don't know who they are, where they are. We've got to send a clear message that the borders are secure. We are not going to take these people. I'm sick of the bleeding hearts, and I'll say to Karen Phelps, you want the people in Australia, and so does other people out there. You want these kids here. Well, how many are you going to support? How many are you going to pay for? How many are you going to educate? How many of you are going to say they will not end up on our welfare system? Because I'm concerned about the people here in Australia that are living in their cars, the families that are getting cut off with electricity, they can't pay the bills, they can't pay the rent. It's about time we started looking after our own people first and foremost, instead of these people who want to come to this country for economic reasons, and they know that they can get on our welfare system and live a very good life.
No, Nauru's a shithole. It really is. I mean, this is what it's actually designed to be. I mean,
you've been there?
You can't get to Nauru. Right?
You haven't been there.
You want to try and get to Nauru, right? Why do you think as when I was a politician, we made very clear we can't go to Nauru, where you have the people from a few organisations, and a lot of them have actually been pushed out. Let's just be clear what this policy was and what it was designed to be. And the Labor Party has been, at times, as complicit as this as the Conservatives. This was the premise behind it. It is punitive. It is designed to actually be a deterrent for people wanting to come to Australia by boat. And the entire idea was, if you can get a group of people, and be it Manus, be it Nauru, wherever, and you make the conditions so hard and so difficult that it will actually act as a deterrent for other people wanting to come to this country. That was the entire basis of the policy. Right? The entire basis of the policy is, how do you stop people coming by boat to Australia? You create such a deterrent that there is no incentive for people to want to do that. Now, there's a separate debate whether that's right or wrong, but for Tony Abbott to try and pretend that it was anything other than that, I think is actually false. Look, the bit that I think is fascinating is public opinion on this is shifting incredibly quickly. Incredibly quickly. Like, there was a front page story of I think the Sunday Telegraph this week, largest circulated paper in the country, saying that the polling and that shows that what a shift in sentiment there has been. I think
that was about getting kids off Nauru. But what about Pauline's point that some of these asylum seekers might be using their children as pawns to try and get to Australia?
Look,
and we've seen reports from Peter Dutton that the United States has rejected a group of people for security reasons, and they have children.
Okay, there is two separate issues there. Right? One is are people using their children? Well, I think you've got to be really, really careful about making those kinds of aspersions and allegations. Now, Senator Hanson says that there's people she's spoken to that have relayed that information to her. I'll leave that to her. I find that pretty hard to believe. I'm not disputing that people have said that to Senator Hanson. That's the first point. The second point is, look, I mean, there's legitimate security grounds. To me, that's a slightly different issue, right? If there's a security grounds with security checks or extreme vetting or whatever the US process was, that people legitimately don't meet that bar, they don't meet that bar. But yeah, look, as a society, we don't want to be looking back on how we treated these children in 30, 40 years and go and say, oh, that's a dark chapter in Australian history and it's something that we really regret. And I think that, I personally think that in a bid to be tough on our borders, we've created a policy that has gone so far that is actually not achieving what we want to be as a society anymore. Look, I support offshore processing. There's a role for offshore processing. There is a role for stopping people dying at sea, but it doesn't mean you have to go to such an extreme extent that we're going to look back in 20, 30 years and people are going to be sitting on panels like this and talk about the great shame that was our border protection policy in the 2000s.
Pauline, what do you say to that? And also, what do you think about this, you know, what should we do with families, with people, if they are a genuine security risk but they have children, I mean, and they're currently on Nauru? How should Australia deal with these people? Where do they go?
Well, they've been given the opportunity to go back to their own countries, but they were refusing to go back there. Look, it is a difficult situation, but I've got to say that I believe that kids that have come here, refugees that have come here, the Australian government has said no, they are not refugees, they shouldn't be entitled to come here. America has said they're a security risk. We've had refugees come into this country. Man Manus, he actually created, you know, the Lent Cafe murders. We've had other ones that have been refugees in this country. They haven't been vetted properly and they weren't, and they were allowed to come to Australia. How do we know about the background of these people? They destroy their passports, their identification, they won't tell us who they are. So therefore, they have no rights to come to this country. If they can't tell the people who they are, they shouldn't actually be coming to this country.
That's not quite right. So just quickly, that idea that says that, you know, these people can't come here because they're not people who have found to not have been refugees. In most of the cases, and certainly they have been found to be refugees, or we believe them to be refugees. We have a policy that says that people who are boat arrivals cannot, you know, come to this country. And so they're actually, a lot of these people are people who are actually stuck in limbo. These are people who are found to be refugees, but cannot come here.
Sam, you take responsibility. You were with the Labor Party and you had 50,000 refugees coming to Australia. Under John Howard, you had the border protection here and we didn't have the boats coming here. As soon as Labor got in, it opened up and 50,000 came here in this country. We've resettled a lot of the refugees into Australia. These ones that are there have not proven themselves to be genuine refugees to warrant them coming to Australia.
No, that is not the case. That is just basically factually incorrect.
And I don't believe...
But that's just wrong. Like, you can't make up your own facts, Pauline. You can't make up facts.
You'll be so weak.
But it's just wrong. Like, it's just factually wrong.
You will be if Labor gets back in.
But Pauline, stop for a sec. Stop.
No,
Can we just fact check
about
this?
The 50,000?
There's just no. Stop.
Or destroying their passports.
But Pauline, this is just wrong.
Yeah.
Let's just stop for a sec. These
Sam?
are people who have found to be refugees.
I tell you what, the Australian people.
They're not refugees. Like, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. Like, it's not, this isn't a debating point. I'm not here to score a point off you. You're just factually wrong. God, I miss you.
Pauline...
They're not refugees.
No, they are refugees. They are refugees. We have a policy...
Yeah,
so I don't think you actually know what the Australian policy is.
Refugees, or were they truly...
No, they're refugees.
Sam, if
Pauline, they're refugees. That's a fact.
A lot of countries to actually come here to Australia. They were safe in Indonesia. They chose to pay the people smugglers to actually come across here to Australia.
But Pauline, they are refugees. They have been found to be refugees.
Many countries.
But Pauline, you can't change this fact. They have found to be refugees.
A refugee is a person that flees a country for their life. And the whole fact is, when you pass other countries, you pay people smugglers to actually pick your destination where you want to end up.
That's not what a refugee is. A refugee is someone who's found under the Refugee Convention.
You know what? I do not.
But you just don't know the facts.
Labor to get back in because there won't be any border protection.
You're just making stuff up on television. You're just making it up.
So don't try and put a spin on this.
I'm not spinning on it. You're just wrong.
Because I don't think we're going to come to a resolution right here.